Welcome back to another episode, our actual season finale of season 1 with Between the Notes.
I can't believe it. We're already here 20 episodes later.
I know, it's kind of unreal, but today's going to be amazing. We have with us our special guests, Isabella Lamadriz and her beautiful, wonderful husband, John Price. So thank you guys so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
So Isabella is a Cuban American soprano known for her powerful performances across the United States and Europe, and is the founder of the Cuban Art Song Project, created in collaboration with Latin music maestro Pablo Zinger. After a successful operatic career, she now focuses on preserving and celebrating Cuban vocal music through concerts, recordings, and educational initiatives, including the acclaimed 2025 debut album, Se Fue. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Oh,
amazing.
Okay, my Cuban, I need a little brushing up on.
I love it. I love it. And John, welcome back. John was with us last week talking about crossover in the voice studio and musical theater and classical singing. And that is because he is a New York City-based operatic tenor and renowned voice teacher, known for his performances in major lyric tenor roles and his crossover concerts spanning classical and musical theater. He serves on the voice faculties of Rider University and Marymount Manhattan College, leads a thriving private studio in New York City and online, quite frankly, and is a respected pedagogue and presenter, as well as the president of the Cuban Art Song Project organization, which is what we celebrate today.
So awesome. So for anyone who has not seen Isabella perform, I think we have a little video clip, right? Can you set this up for us, Isabella?
Yes. So this is the Cuban Art Song Project's second single, Dos Gardenias, and this is the official music video of Dos Gardenias.
Here we go.
Dos gardenias para ti, con ellas quiero decir te quiero, te adoro, mi vida. Ponlas toda tu atención, porque son tu corazón y el mío. Dos gardenias para ti, que tendrán todo el calor de un beso. De esos besos que te di, que jamás encontrarás en el calor de otro querer.
Oh my gosh, that was absolutely so cool. I love how I love the dancing and the singing, obviously, but like just how everything was tied together. A little fog machine action going on. It was very, very, very cool. So, Isabella, where did you grow up, and when did you know that you wanted to be a classical singer? How did all that get started?
Yeah. So I was originally born in Florida, in Tampa, and then my family relocated when I was 2 to New Hampshire. And so I grew up in New Hampshire. I grew up in a rural town of Bethlehem, very north, very near the Canadian border.
I've been there. I can vouch. There is nothing there. No, it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place.
It is a beautiful place, but it is it's small, a small community. And I was a dancer before I was a singer. So I started dancing when I was 2, and just I loved it. I've always loved dancing. I still do dance for fun. I was identified early on in elementary school as being a singer. Like I think so many of us, I know that both Weston and Brian have talked about this on previous episodes, where I had always just a very strong head voice. And so I was quickly identified as somebody who potentially could be a singer. So I got into voice lessons at a young age. I was primarily doing musical theater because of the dancing. But I was always like the kid who, when we did musicals, I never needed a microphone, even though I really wanted one.
I love it.
And my voice just always leaned more on the classical side, I think, just because it always had such a natural cut in the head voice. And so the musical theater wasn't making as much of a fit for me. And then when I went to high school, I went to a semi-private high school, and there was a baritone who was a few years older than me, and he was getting ready to go to Eastman and was telling me about being, a classical singer and being an opera singer. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's that? And he was, talking about arias. And I was like, I don't know what an aria is. And so I started to work with his teacher when I was like 15. So it was really fast then. But I just was obsessed with it and just knew as I was doing it that it was what I wanted to do, and it was what I wanted to go and study. And I knew I wanted to go to a music program so that I could have a really rigorous training and experience. So that's how I got into specifically classical singing.
That's great.
I love it. So I know Isabella and John really well. Our families know each other. And so I know that your dad, hey buddy, I know, Isabella, that your dad emigrated from Cuba when he was a child. And I'm just curious about that experience. I mean, did he ever talk about what it was like? And also too, how much is being half Cuban part of your life when you were growing up, and how did you embrace that with your music?
Yeah. So my own personal coming together as identifying as being Cuban, being part of the Latin community, definitely came much later in life. My dad was always a bit shy when it came to, even though he's fluent in both Spanish, Portuguese, and English, he was always a bit shy when it came to speaking in Spanish. He would speak with his mother and siblings. But growing up, we didn't really speak in Spanish. And I never really got a sense of his journey and some of the trauma that he experienced fleeing a country and giving up so much until later in life when we later discussed it. So in terms of feeling like I was Cuban or observing my dad, being a Cuban person, I didn't really see that. And I didn't see people who were Latin in the community. The community was very small. One of the things that I did have early on was Friday nights, we would often put the Buena Vista Social Club Live at Carnegie album on, and he would cook a Cuban meal. And there were several dishes that he always knew how to make. And so that was always a really fun and festive time for me. But it was always interesting because growing up, I think that people, when they saw my dad and when they met my dad, they knew that, he was of some sort of Latin origin. And I remember even through high school, sometimes I would tell people, specifically adults, I'm half Cuban. And 9 times out of 10, the first thing that they would say is, oh, well, you don't look Cuban. And
whatever that means.
That's
exactly, whatever that means.
Not acceptable anymore, by the way.
No. Although, I sometimes still get that. And I understand where it's coming from. And I really do think it's coming from a place of ignorance.
Sure, yeah.
And I think people mean well. But that definitely influenced me not feeling like I identified with that culture. And it wasn't until I went to school in Boston and I was around much more people and diverse people and people from different countries and families who had similar stories, and even families who also wanted to kind of assimilate into that American system and American dream, and them also struggling to identify that. That's when I really wanted, I wanted to feel like I was part of the community, because I knew that was valid. And growing up, it was hard to find those people in that community. But then once I was in a city, it was so much easier. And so that's when I really started to take a deeper dive.
Yeah.
So what initially brought you to Boston? I mean, I assume this mysterious baritone in high school that was off on his way to Eastman must have inspired you to pursue. Did you do your Bachelor of Music and Vocal Performance, or what happened there?
Yeah. So Boston is probably the closest city to where I grew up. And right before I started applying for schools, there was a teacher right outside of Boston. So my family would drive me 2 hours one way to take lessons, to take weekly lessons. And that was a common thing. Before that, my musical theater teacher was 90 minutes away one way. So it kind of illustrates how separated everybody was, but also just the such dedication that my family had, knowing how badly I wanted to be a singer.
I love that.
So yeah. So I applied to several conservatories. I knew that I wanted to go to a conservatory. I knew that I wanted to just feel like so steeped in music. It felt like I'd be going to like Hogwarts, essentially. So I went to Boston Conservatory. I ended up going to Boston Conservatory for vocal performance for both my bachelor's and my master's. And when I went there and I was auditioning, there was a couple places that I had in mind, but I really enjoyed the intimacy that the school provided. Like I knew that the class sizes were small, and the facilities were really beautiful, and you're just like in the heart of Boston. And so I knew it was like such a big change for me. It was a huge city for me when I first got there.
Sure.
And at that time, you were having aspirations of pursuing a career as an operatic soprano, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I felt like I needed to go into a music program, and that was going to be kind of my ticket into this industry.
Yeah. Isabella's a beautiful coloratura. I've heard her sing wonderful. Actually, we both have, actually, Weston. We were there at the 92nd Street Y in New York. And but I know you've done Queen of the Night and some of the other. Was it Costanza with that?
Yes. Yeah, I did
Costanza.
Thought so.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, no, that's awesome. Okay, so anyway, so then you kind of like were like, all right, as a career goal in like 2023, you were like, I'm not going to focus solely on opera anymore. And what led to that? What led to that decision for you?
So, when I was right out of school, I knew that I still felt like my vocal technique wasn't finished. And I knew that I still needed to do some intense work. I had done some young artist programs. I had done mostly like summer residencies. I had gone overseas and done roles. But there were still some things that I knew I needed to work on. And that made sense because also I was, in my 20s and knew that was kind of a time to cook a little bit more. And so as things were starting to kind of line up for me, COVID happened, of course. And I, like so many artists, were trying to figure out what to do in this period of time where we couldn't do live performances, or we couldn't do performances in front of a huge audience. And so that's when I started to dream up this idea of a recital and program just, a set of Cuban music in my own personal journey to identify and feel more connected to my familial roots. I had been studying Spanish and had just been immersing myself. And so it made sense for me to want to immerse myself in the profession that I do. But when I was in school, the curriculum for Spanish music, or Spanish as a language, is not one of the main languages that you sing in. You have rigorous training with English, German, Italian, and French. And then there's a couple other languages that you can choose as electives. Within the Spanish repertoire, again, music that is in the language of Spanish, it was very limited, and it was mostly from Spain. So it was a very specific and concentrated repertoire, and I didn't have a lot of access or teachers that knew repertoire from Latin America, and certainly not, as specific as Cuba. So I kind of was like, I don't even know where to start, but I know I want to do I want to do a set. I want to start learning some of these songs. And so I just Googled composers, Cuban composers, and this anthology popped up of this composer, Ernesto Lecuona, and I bought the book, and it came, and I, was looking through it and was looking through all this music and stuff, and it looked perfect. And I noticed that it was edited by this guy, Pablo Zinger, and I was like, huh. And I read his bio, and it was like exactly the kind of person, the kind of mentor that I would need. And he lived in New York. And so I was like, oh man, I wonder if he still lives in New York. And he did. And so I just friended him on Facebook, and then I asked to call him, and he was like, so what do you...
You stalked him. You stalked him. Let's just say what it...
Well, I will say,
if you're looking for a reason to move to New York.
I didn't have his information, right. But he was on Facebook, so I friended him on Facebook, and then I had this intent of sending this message where I was like, hi, my name is, Isabella, and I'm looking for somebody to help me with this. But he beat me to it because he accepted my friend request, and then he saw a video of me singing with my cat, a Christmas song.
It was COVID. A lot of things happened.
And he was like, this is so cute. And I was like, oh no, I meant to do this whole thing. But also I was like, well, this is fun. This is a good icebreaker.
Totally.
So I called him up, and he was like, what do you want? And I was like, I don't really know, but I got this anthology, and I really want to start to learn some Cuban repertoire. And, you're the king of zarzuela, and all of this repertoire. Can we work together? And he was like, yes. And, the rest is history. I've been working with him now for 3 or 4 years.
Well, I think, first of all, I think you win the blue first golden prize, whatever, for doing things in COVID. I mean, that's incredible that you were like, well, what are we going to do? I know. I'll revamp my entire... That's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, as much of COVID was such a bummer. I mean, it did spur along a lot of creativity from artists in our field and other fields of we just have this need that we want to share, and we want to be sharing and moving our audiences, and especially when there's so much tough times and people are in terrible situations around us. It's what brought the Price, Lamadriz, and Email families together, really, for Westminster's Masters of Vocal Pedagogy online, and so that's how we, kind of got together. And honestly, with where I was with my career and stuff, had COVID not happened, I would be in a completely different place right now. And I probably would say not a much worse place than where I am right now.
I feel similar. I totally feel similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how when we look back on those things that we thought at the time was the end of the world or such a different thing, and now we see the greatness that's come out of it in so many different ways. It's kind of an incredible,
Yeah.
When we started a practice, just real quick, that was, that the first thing that kind of birthed what became the Cuban Art Song Project, which we'll get into, was this first kind of retreat that Isabella and I did together, where we're like, let's just go somewhere and let's just kind of talk about, what we're doing artistically and in terms of our work life. And that was the thing that kind of initially spawned this. The first idea was that it would just be a concert. And that's a practice we've kept going now. And we do a couple times every year, just kind of getting together as also just thinking about what are we wanting to do artistically? Where is that? And so I just can't endorse that enough. So if that isn't part of your life, I really encourage you to make it part of your life, where you just kind of get away a little bit and specifically ask yourself some of those bigger career questions. It's just been transformative.
Yeah, we went to a lodge in in the winter, and we were just like near a fire, and we would go walk out on the snow, and then we would come back and we would talk, about what we were enjoying with our careers, what we felt like we wanted to improve upon. And just through that conversation, and then also being next to nature, I think really created this mental clarity where the idea came.
I love that. I mean, Weston and I met in Aspen, and it was very much the same thing. The nature and the majesty.
We didn't stay
mountains.
in a lodge, but
I guess we could, although I don't think we could afford Aspen now.
I was in Burlingame at the time.
Oh my gosh! Oh, the dorms, they were awesome. But anyway, well, let's get back to it. Okay, so you've recently released the debut album Se Fue, we said, on Lexicon Classics recording label. Tell us a little bit about the process of doing the recording and how you sing differently, from I mean, because I've heard it, as we heard earlier, you still have a classical sound, but it's certainly much closer to speech, I think. So just tell us a little bit about how that recording process was for you.
Yeah. So when we were going through the process of recording, identifying where we were going to record, I knew the instrumentation was going to be a small group, that we were going to have percussion, bass, piano, and vocals. At first, I think because people knew that I was an opera singer, they kind of wanted to push the project into one room, like a live room, where there would be, we record in like a larger hall space, and there would be that kind of ambient feel, and you would hear the reverb, and it would be very much like some of the classical albums that people are used to hearing. And I knew really from the get-go that was not what I wanted, that I wanted to have a much more intimate sound. I wanted to feel like when you listen to the album, that you could hear the voice, and that there would be just something that was more akin to the jazz clubs and the more intimate setting that you get from that. I mean, I love opera, and I think that hearing it and being how palpable it is so exhilarating, and I think that is something that occupies that space. But for having the album that I wanted it to be more on a jazz album, while still, obviously, it's always gonna, like, my voice is always gonna have a classical sound to it. But what it meant was that when we went to record, we actually ended up recording in booths, and we were in isolation booths. And because of that, we were able to do several takes. I was later able to do secondary vocal dubs. We actually ended up recording more. We recorded an album and a half. Because we were able to utilize the time. Whereas if we had been in just one room, the take would have been the take.
A miracle of that thing is like you would have like the bass player would come up and say, around, measure, 22, I, played something wrong. Can we just go back and grab that? And everybody else can take 5. As opposed to everybody okay, let's have everybody get back in and play again. So you burn so much less music, that you've recorded by doing it that way. And it was
not, I really had no idea when I was getting into it. So also the way that I ended up singing was influenced by the studio time that I had. And we had 2 days to record it. So it was not a ton of time. But I knew I wanted it to be close mic'd. And when I had been working with Pablo, there was just a sound ideal that had come to me where I wanted there to be more colors, and that I didn't have to rely on so much stamina. Because I know for me, with my voice type and just my own instrument, I can get vocally tired really quickly when I'm having to give a lot of gas in like the middle register. Whereas like my top is always there. And so I wanted to have more consistency. And so I knew that that was going to mean that I was going to need to sing softer. And it wasn't going to be me singing in a hall. So that's how we ended up recording it. And then just through the process of hearing what it sounds like and what it sounds like to be up on that close mic, it later influenced how I actually perform. So now when I perform with Cuban Art Song Project, basically I'm always mic'd because I want to be able to do a lot of different things with my voice. And I want to feel like I've got the stamina to do it and to do it in all different types of settings and not have to rely on the power in order to be heard.
Such a
was
beautiful
that idea of
segue.
was that idea of recording in the isolation due to doing the recording during COVID, or was that already part of the plan moving into the recording?
No, it ended up being part of the plan. So we actually recorded the album last July. So by then, the COVID restrictions were not as severe. But again, I think because I just had in my head like Ella Fitzgerald and some of those jazz singers that I love listening to, and I love listening to like on vinyl and hearing that warmth with the sound, but still like the brilliance, still the core of the sound. That was what I wanted to do. And so leading up to the recording, I started to integrate that more into my singing, and I worked with Pablo in terms of making sure that the keys made sense so that the voice lived in that more middle area so that it didn't sound too operatic and it didn't need to be as operatic. And then also with my teacher, Arthur Levy, working on just having a huge expanse of colors and dynamics so that I could still float and it'd be picked up by the mic, but it still have the clarity and color that you get.
And
Yeah,
just for
awesome.
just
Sorry,
for
I didn't mean to
information,
jump on you, Brian. You were saying
No, you're totally fine. You're totally fine. I just want to say you're talking about the recording aspect and the stamina aspect. Just to plug my own recording here, I remember when doing the French, there was one part of Au Paradis where there was like, just talk about the difference between being in a booth and being on stage with 60 musicians, where me and the oboe player were in unison. And because I was singing out to the house and he was, the oboe player was trying to follow the conductor, we had to do it 9 times before we got it right. And I'm not sure the engineer ever was actually pleased with what we did. But when I turned around and we looked at each other as we were singing, perfect, no problem. But I mean, so I guess it's just such an issue of like, saving your stamina and like, and did you find it hard to sing in the booth because of the acoustic being so dry, or did you have headphones or both?
So everybody had headphones on, though I always like to have a headphone off because I need to be able to hear myself in the space.
Right. Totally.
And it was a weird experience because I'm so used to a room really being part of the voice. It's part of the instrument. And so I kind of had to rely and just trust the process of what I was doing. Again, thankfully, I was able to have 2 days where I recorded. The first day I was like, John will tell you, I was like incredibly stressed out. And like, I like blew through my voice so fast because it was, time and money and the musicians and things like that. And I wanted it all to work. But then I later like learned how, doing the vocal dubbing and being able to go back and in the engineer's booth and being able to listen and to make quick changes. So I learned all that stuff through the process of recording the album. These weren't things that I learned in school because essentially you're taught how to make self tapes, which is just, you do one, you do the take. Hopefully you put the mics in like a good position where like the piano's not drowning the voice and things like that.
Right.
And it's different when you're doing something for the purpose of a live setting. And it's different, obviously, like live singing and singing in a concert setting versus something that's going to be recorded. And then that's the way that it's going to be. So it was a very interesting process.
I mean, I think that's something our audience really wants to hear, right? Like this, that's the kind of thing a young singer's like, I wonder what it is like to do a recording like that, to hear, a studio quality recording. So I think that's going to be really, Great. Sorry, Weston, you were going to say something about.
Well, speaking of the recording, I think we have another track to play, the Dame de tus Rosas, right?
Yes, which is actually the first, that's the first song that I ever learned, first Cuban song I ever learned.
Oh my gosh. All right, well, let's take a listen.
Here we go.
De tus rosas rojas, de tus rosas blancas, mi jardín en flor, mi jardín que sabe de tristezas modas, de penas muy hondas en mi corazón. Como la rosa nació en mi pecho fragante el amor que fue mi felicidad. Como la rosa murió, deshojándose mi corazón, muerto de tanto llorar.
Oh my God, that was absolutely fantastic. So I sorry to go back a little bit, but you had mentioned that you initially had this idea during COVID to put together this recital that had a set of Cuban art songs on it. But and we've talked a little bit about the Cuban Art Song Project, but how did a set on a recital turn into this entire thing? How did all that come together for you?
Yeah. It was just kind of a whirlwind. But I just, as I was going through this music with Pablo, and he has manuscripts. I mean, he has music that is in old, just like loose leaf papers, and then he has other anthologies, and I just couldn't believe the mass amounts of music and not having heard any of it. And even when I was doing a little bit of research and trying to find some of these pieces, because I think it's always easier when you have a example of a song. Like, I don't really like identify with a piece if I'm just looking at the sheet music. I need to hear what it sounds like. And when I was initially starting, I was like, oh wow, there's really not a lot of recordings. There's some recordings, but there's not a ton. And then the recordings that they do have is from the era that the song was written in. So a lot of the music is from the 30s, 40s, 50s. And so those recordings have degradation on them. So through being like, wow, this music is so amazing. And I could see young singers singing it. I could see, people who are from different Latin countries or just interested in this music would really greatly benefit from it, but they don't have a lot of resources. I mean, I'm just going to one person who's got this like plethora, but it's not there for the masses. And so that's when I thought it really needs to be bigger than the recital. And I felt so passionate, and obviously still do. It's my main focus for my career. So I knew that I wanted to do an album because I feel like that is the easiest way for it to be documented, for this music to be documented.
Sure.
And then as we kept going, after we finished the album and I started to do more performances and I was doing things and people were so interested, I realized that not only did I want this to be a main part of what I do as a singer, but I also want this to be for other people. And so that's when I started the process of having it be an organization and become a nonprofit. And through the nonprofit, we have sheet music that's available for singers. I've had several singers who have contacted me and are interested in continuing the mission of being able to represent underserved Cuban repertoire, which I would argue is most of the music, most of the repertoire, and having it be from a bunch of different subgenres. So not just zarzuela, not just like an operatic aria, but art song. And the way that we think of art song is the elevation of this music and the sort of settings that we perform this music in.
I love it. And I think, by picking music that has not been recorded, for decades, this is wonderful, because the record company is going to be like, this is great. This is exactly the kind of stuff we want to put out there, not the 18th version of whatever, that's so awesome.
And
So
I didn't know a lot of this music, obviously, before this whole process.
Mhm.
And I got to say, like, some of it is really spectacular. I mean, it's vocally,
Yeah.
it gives you great opportunities to show more classical, chops, but also it combines that with the rhythms that are so inherent to a lot of Latin music and specifically Cuban music. And I realized that a lot of these tunes I recognized from jazz repertoire, but the songs that they were drawn from haven't been performed in this form, much at all since the revolution. And, a lot of these, pieces were recorded initially. And a lot of them times the original recordings that we have were by Cuban opera singers. And
Wow.
so that's a lot of the recordings that now we're hopefully coming in and being able to sort of take the torch from them and give it out to people saying, hey, in addition to, the wonderful beginning Italian repertoire and maybe the Spanish repertoire from Spain that you're used to singing, maybe you should also consider this. And, you can take something that has similar pedagogical and artistic value, but has so many fewer performances, and you can really give people something that they didn't even realize was available to them.
I love it.
And it's just a slice too. I mean, Cuba is very prolific. The amount of dance forms that have come out of that island is incredible, and it has heavily influenced jazz. And I think that jazz in general has done a good representation of the music, but it's not a lot of vocal music. But I do think that, if anything, my hope, in addition to sharing this music, performing this music, and being a champion of this music, I really hope that it has people want to explore other, slices of the music, because I think that we can get very focused on, well, I have to have my 5 and 6 arias, and they have to represent, blah, 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 and they have to be this, period of time. And that's, of course, important. But I have never felt more connected than going through this music. It has been just as powerful as any of the other operas that I've done.
That's beautiful. Well, we'll be sure to make sure that in the description we'll put the link to the Cuban Art Song Project website and any upcoming performances and so forth. And I just can't tell you how much we're appreciative for both of you joining us today and opening up, I'm sure for a lot of people, a whole new world of repertoire for them. So thank you so much for all that you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you all, our listeners and viewers, for it's been wonderful putting together these 20 episodes. And this is our, as we said before, season finale. So thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you sometime in September with season 2.
We're just getting started.
See you soon.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Notes. Make sure you hit that subscribe button.
And join us next week for more behind the scenes stories, laughs, and operatic gold coming your way.